Howdy folks, welcome to the Royal Marines Museum in Southsea, Hampshire. Behind me here you can see LCVP Foxtrot 7. It's a landing craft vehicle and personnel. This one was built in 1965 and was actually used, one of four which were on board HMS Fearless during the Falklands War in 1982. This was used to take members of Fal Commando ashore on San Carlos Water during the re-invasion, I suppose you would call it, the liberation of the islanders. It was also used to ferry wounded sailors off HMS Antelope when it was bombed in San Carlos Water. A little bit of history there for you. Speaking of a little bit of history, check this out. .105mm pack howitzer captured at Port Stanley by Fal Commando. It was used to shell the Royal Marines as they were attacking Two Sisters and Mount Harriet during the push up to Port Stanley in 1982. More captured equipment. This was donated to the museum by 3 Commando Brigade Air Squadron. It's a Zu-23 Russian light anti-aircraft gun captured in Iraq. They don't make them like they used to.
I think it's fairly safe to say that their uniforms and equipment have changed slightly in the last 300 years. That, boys and girls, is the brown Bess musket, the standard weapon for the British Army and Royal Navy for over 100 years. It wasn't incredibly accurate. At a range of anything up to 100 yards. The hit rate of 1 in 200 shots was a reasonable expectation in battle, and that's obviously why everybody fought the way they did back then, just massed ranks of soldiers lining up. Victory through superior volume of firepower was very much the order of the day. This is freaky as hell. It's really clever how they've done this. They basically projected a face onto a dummy. This is Hannah Snell. She was a female Marine. Joined up in disguise and actually fought in the Royal Marines for a couple of years before retiring and revealing her true gender. The thing you have to remember about the Royal Marines is they have always been a volunteer force. That's why they were trusted with carrying weapons on board naval warships in the 1700s. Because unlike the sailors that they served alongside, Royal Marines were volunteers. A lot of sailors were press-ganged. Selection of weapons used by Marines in the 17 and 1800s. Those pikes used to repel boarding parties. Selection of cutlasses up there. Very, very effective when boarding other enemy ships, fighting in close combat. Marine officers' swords. Down there, the long sea service pistol from the early 19th century. Check out the flintlock carbine blunderbuss. And if all else fails, hit them with an axe. Okay, we're starting to get a little more modern here, from the 1900s. Primarily the Third China War, or the Boxer Rebellion. You can see a Hotchkiss Winchester rifle there. And various different arms captured from the Chinese. Get a load of this. That is a Chinese, look at the size of it, it's captured during the Boxer Rebellion of the Third Chinese War. Quite 2 men to fire it. Unbelievable. Royal Marines obviously also served in Africa. Fought against the Ashanti, the Zulu and the Dervishes. You can see a representation of a Zulu warrior there with his assegai, short stabbing spear. Dervish armour. Slightly more advanced than what the Zulus were carrying, but still not going to stop a bullet. And yet, ferocious warriors. So a representation of Marine African uniform here next to a Norden felt machine gun. Get a load of that. Used by both the British Army and the Navy. during the 1880s. It was only in service for 5 years and was eventually replaced, well I say eventually, it was very quickly replaced by the Maxim gun. And there it is, the 7.92mm Maxim machine gun, which replaced the Nordenfelt machine gun. And here we can see there's a diorama with the old Lee-Enfield rifle there. First World War. There's a lot of background noise in here. And it's funny how advanced and yet backward the First World War was at the same time. Because you've got a weapon like that, which was the pinnacle of military technology at the time. And check this out. Armoured breastplate used by German soldiers. Yep, we're going back to the 13th century. More First World War era equipment. German Mauser rifle. Very, very good rifle. And over here, British counterpart. The short Lee-Enfield rifle number 1, Mark III. Fantastic weapon. Well, we finally make it upstairs to the Second World War section of the museum. And let's not forget that they are Royal Marines, they are sea soldiers, so heavily involved during the Russian convoys, the Malta convoys. See the Royal Marine gunner there in his anti-flash. That anti-flash kit has not changed since the 1940s. That's almost exactly the same as the anti-flash gear that I used to wear. Basically that's to protect you from getting flash burned in the event of an explosion. Because it's white, it reflects the flash rather than absorbs it the way the black clothing does. And cotton, so it doesn't instantly flash and melt the way nylon would. Here we go, Royal Marine Commandos. Now, the original commando units were not just Royal Marines. They were Army Commando units. But the Royal Marines are the only commando regiments left in the British Armed Forces. After the Second World War, the Army Commando units were phased out. Tropical fighting rig here for Italy and the former Yugoslavia. What have we got down here? Oh, it's a Model 91 Mannlicher Carcano bolt action rifle, an Italian carbine. Never seen one of those before. Here we go. Special Forces. See, today the SAS and the SBS are known as Special Forces, but their origins actually go back to the small reconnaissance and sabotage units in the Second World War. Like this. To this day, Royal Marine swimmer canoeists is the official designation given to members of the Special Boat Squadron. What we got over here? Appropriately enough, commandos on D-Day. 17,500 Royal Marines took part in the Normandy landings. They manned the guns on battleships, they transported troops to the beaches in landing craft. They landed on the beaches as part of the newly formed commando brigades. Have some memorabilia here captured on D-Day. Famous Walther P38 pistol. Iron Cross there. German War Awards. Look at this. Lance Corporal George Lars and Lance Corporal Helmut Frost's pay books. All captured on D-Day. Wow. The White Ensign from LCS M79, Normandy, 6th of June 1944. Signed by the crew. That's awesome. Let's get a bit closer. Do they actually give their ranks? They don't, just their names. There's a stoker there. Signalman. J. Hampton there, guns. Probably a Marine. Although obviously they were all Navy gunners as well. Fantastic little diorama here of the raid on Zeebrugge. I'm almost certainly pronouncing that horribly, horribly wrong. It was a plan concocted by the Admiralty to block the entrance to the canal leading from Zeebrugge up to Bruges, where the U-boats were based. They used 3 old ships that they manoeuvred to sink them in the harbour, landed a force of 700 Royal Marines and 200 sailors to attack the harbour mole and destroy the gun batteries. It was a hotly contested battle. German gunners with supporting machine guns opened up in full force as the attack took place. HMS Vindictive, actually there's a picture of it here. There's an old cruiser that was used for the attack. She was deemed expendable. They were going to sink her in the harbour mouth. She took the brunt of the attack, riddled with bullets and shells. Marine and Navy casualties were pretty high. 119 Royal Marines were killed. It's a seventh of the force. 234 wounded. As an operation, it wasn't a complete success. They did close the canal, but only for 3 weeks. The Navy won 9 Victoria Crosses that day. The Royal Marines were awarded 2 of them, to be allocated by a ballot of the men. The men voted for Captain Bamford, Royal Marine Light Infantry, and Sergeant Finch. We'll see their Victoria Crosses in the medal room here in the museum later on. Royal Marines also train to fight in the jungle, as you can see demonstrated by Booty over here with his Tommy gun. Royal Marines train regularly in the jungles of Brunei, Belize and Borneo to fight in these sort of conditions, as well as Arctic warfare, which we'll cover later. And the Royal Marines have fought not only in the jungles of Burma in the Second World War, but also in the aftermath of the Second World War, the communist insurgency in Malaya. Royal Marines saw very heavy combat. This is the number 5 Lee-Enfield rifle. This was specifically adapted from the number 4 Lee-Enfield rifle for jungle warfare. Basically, it's a much shortened, cut down, almost a carbine version of the Lee-Enfield rifle. The size of that, it's like a little girl's gun. Of course, the conflicts that the Royal Marines were involved in didn't end in the Second World War and the communist insurgency in Malaya. There was, of course, this small matter of a war in Korea. This display covers Korea, Suez, Cyprus, and Aden, which takes us all the way up to 1962, or possibly 1967. You can see the commando carrier HMS Albion here. HMS Intrepid. HMS Intrepid met a sad fate. We had 2 of these amphibious assault ships, HMS Intrepid and HMS Fearless. Unfortunately, we couldn't afford to run them both after the Falklands, and so HMS Intrepid was basically laid up in Portsmouth Harbour, pretty much as a spare parts store for HMS Fearless. We could only afford to run one of them, and the poor old girl, the Intrepid, became known as HMS Decrepit. Anytime anything broke on the Fearless, they would just steal the part from the Intrepid. There just wasn't any money for anything else. It was a real shame. Moving down, some weapons. Oh, good stuff. RL-83 rocket launcher, Belgian-produced weapons. The Belgians have a very proud history of arming the world, don't they? There's got to be an FN Fal rifle in here somewhere. It is the Royal Marines display after all. Oh, look at that. An Arab Jazayel. The old long rifle there. Bess RPD machine gun captured in Suez. Down here, M1917 Browning medium machine gun. Well, things are getting slightly more modern now, and we're up to the Falklands Conflict, or the Malvinas, depending on who you ask. And it's funny just how similar, well, not just similar, downright identical, the equipment used by the British and the Argentine forces were. You might be forgiven for thinking that was a British general-purpose machine gun. It's not. It's a captured Argentinian general-purpose machine gun, manufactured by Fabrique Nationale of Belgium. Exactly the same in almost every respect as the weapons used by the Royal Marines against the Argentinians. Moving up here, there it is. The FN Fal Automatic Rifle, semi-automatic rifle. And that is an Argentine paratrooper folding stock version of the FN Fal. Almost identical to the British SLR, self-loading rifle, or the L1A1, which the Royal Marines used against the Argentinians in the very same war. Fabrique Nationale, arming the world since, I don't know, ages. Coming at the end of the display section of the museum now, and we're into much more modern territory. That's an AK-47 captured by Fleet Protection Group of Royal Marines, FPGRM, from Somali pirates. Much more modern equipment now. There we go, HMS Westminster, Type 23 frigate. Operations in Afghanistan. Everybody will be familiar with this sort of equipment. Again, look at this, again. Bloody Belgians arming the world. It's the FN Minimi, or the M249. This section of the museum is dedicated to training, modern training of the Royal Marines. You can see here an example of what a Marine's locker would look like, or what it was expected to look like. And this section is very much, there's lots of video presentations, stuff that isn't really going to translate well to YouTube. But what I can tell you is my last job in the Navy was working at the Admiralty Interview Board. And what the Admiralty Interview Board, or the AIB, did was to assess people who wanted to be officers in the Royal Navy, Royal Marines, and the Royal Naval Reserve. It was a 2-day course, academic, there were written tests, command exercises, and lots of teamwork training. And the teamwork training in particular, I can tell you that every single time, without fail, we'd have a number of boards going through. There might be 2 naval officer boards,
we got to the last checkpoint, my troop commander
and 1 potential Royal Marine officer board. And I will guarantee you, every time, the leadership tasks, the Royal Marine trainees, or potential recruits, were guaranteed to do it twice as quickly and twice as efficiently as everybody else. That's just the kind of people that want to be Royal Marine officers. There's an interactive display here. Eddie's going to fire a GPMG on the range. Look at him. Look at that big shit-eating grin. All right, Eddie, in your own time.
You have 15 minutes. Start at depth of 3 to 5 minutes. Return to the head 100 yards.
Watch and shoot. Pull the trigger, son. Oh, you got him, Ed. Ceasefire. How did he do?
7 out of 15.
7 out of 15. Eddie, you suck. Targets will fall when hit. Targets to your front. Go on. Oh, you got one. You can see that the safest place to be on any modern battlefield is right in front of whatever Eddie's shooting at. 5 targets, he got one of them.
One with the first shot missed every other.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, targets at various ranges. Come on, Eddie, pull the trigger, son. Look, oh. So he hits the ones right at the back, but he can't hit the ones closest to him. Come on, Eddie. One for the core. Yeah, the core get theirs. Oh, he's got another one. Eddie, they're going to get you. Ceasefire. Score 30 out of 60. Not terrible. 43 out of 100.
Last
Eddie.
person got 31, so I'm alright with that.
Yeah, but just because you're better than shit doesn't mean you're good.
Yeah, I finally got the hang of it at the end. Way too late.
That's it.
After I've been shot by everybody else.
Absolutely, yeah. See, experience. It's the one thing that you don't have until after you need it.
Yeah.
Let's not forget the Royal Marine Band service. There are various Royal Marine bands, one in each command area. And of course the Royal Marine School of Music here in Portsmouth, inside the dockyard, which is housed inside what used to be the old Royal Naval Detention Quarters, the Navy jail. Now, if you ever meet a Royal Marine, not a Royal Marine bandsman, if you ever meet a Royal Marine, the fastest way to wind him up and get yourself punched is to ask him what instrument he plays. However, everybody laughs and jokes about the Royal Marine Band service, but in times of war they do very, very valuable service as stretcher bearers and medics. So yeah, Royal Marine Band service. King George III. The Americans will know him as the king who lost the colonies, but the Royal Marines know him as the man who gave the Royal Marines the Royal in their title. Most regiments of the British Army, Navy and Air Force display battle honours in their regimental colours. The Royal Marines only choose to display one, and that's Gibraltar. And the reason for that, in 1704, during the War of Spanish Succession, a force of Marines and sailors took Gibraltar from the Spanish. A combined force of 15,000 Spanish and French troops then tried to retake Gibraltar from the 2,000 Marines who were stationed there to defend it. The fleet left to bring back reinforcements, told the Marines to hold Gibraltar until relieved. They held it until relieved. 7 months later. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, folks, or at the very least learned something. I've definitely been getting a lot out of these museum visits. It's been hugely entertaining and educational for me. And hopefully, I'm sharing some of that with you folks here on YouTube. The museum website, I'm linking in the video description. It's definitely worth a visit. And if any of you are actually mad enough for thinking of joining the Royal Marines, I'll also put a link up to their recruitment page in the Ministry of Defence's website. The one thing I will say about Royal Marine training, and this holds true for the US Marine Corps as well, is that while the Army, the British Army and the US Army were trying to entice people to sign up by showing adverts with soldiers off-duty drinking beer in all sorts of foreign locales, advertising the sporting opportunities, all the windsurfing and the mountain climbing, the Royal Marines and the US Marines, they didn't go in for that sort of thing. I remember in the 80s there was a recruitment poster, and this was quite a famous image for the US Marine Corps. And it just showed a drill instructor giving an evil look at some poor recruit, and it just said, "We don't promise you a rose garden." It's an iconic picture. And the Royal Marines advertising campaign was very, very, very similar. They used to show you an advertisement of some poor sod going through the 32-week
basic training course. And nearly dying at several stages. And it just kept saying, at what point would you give up? Here, guy nearly dies the first time. Here, guy nearly dies the second time. How about here? Guy nearly dies the third time. And it just said, if at any point you answered yes, we're not interested. Royal Marine Commandos. 99.9% need not apply. So, it's not for the faint-hearted. As always, folks, take care, and I'll catch you next time.